Welcome to the Liberty Collaborative, where the past meets the present in the fight for freedom. We uncover the roots of liberty, spotlight the people who shaped it, and explore what it takes to preserve it today. And be ready to think deeper, stand stronger, and act with purpose. You're in the right place. Let's reclaim what matters most.
And good Thursday morning, everybody. It is July 16th, 2026. Another hot one here in Connecticut with a little smoke screen from our friends up north with the wildfires going on. But this is the Liberty Collaborative Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Bowman, here with Chris Coyle, Mike Hancock, and K. Carl Smith. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome. How are you? It's nice to have everybody together for a change.
Good morning.
Guys, how you doing?
Doing great.
Very good. So
welcome from Smoky, Connecticut.
That is Smoky, Connecticut. So Chris, let's just kind of go around the room. It's been a while since all four of us have been
here. Good to be back.
Little recap.
So I'll jump in, you guys. I was up in Labrador, Canada, fishing, and I had a great experience in that. A group sitting at one table had a fairly, call it, different view of mine of politics and their description of Canada and U.S. relations, Trump, world history. And so it was an interesting exercise for me to learn how to disagree better, more effectively. I just finished listening to a book called How to Disagree Better. I think her name is Julie Minton from Harvard. And it really, guys, is about probing and understanding what they're thinking and expressing verbally an interest to understand. And I got huge compliments from the other guys. So they call them newfies. And there's another table of newfies that are hysterical. A couple of former hockey players. They're all former hockey players, but they're jokesters. Well, anyway, long story short, Canada Day, Linda got up to sing "O Canada." And as she ended, the newfies all shouted out from their table, "Hey, Chris, why don't you jump up and sing the 51st state anthem?" The liberal table didn't find that so funny, but everyone got a good laugh. Anyway, guys, it's good to be back.
All right, K. Carl, what do you got on your side over there in Georgia?
Alabama.
Oh, Alabama. You're right.
We got a little hot weather going on here. Hit 3 digits here recently, but we're still in the fight here. I'm just traveling a lot right now. I'm heading out to Chicago next week, and then after that, I'm in Colorado. Get a chance to see Mike maybe. Then after that, I'm heading to Georgia, doing the book signing, promoting the book, Douglas versus Marx: The Battle for America's Soul. I think is the topic today. So
yeah. And this lady, Nat here, 3803, said, thank you. Gosh, she got your book. She enjoys reading it. So thank you for listening and watching.
Thank you for your support, and give me some feedback on that. Love to hear your thoughts on it.
What about you, Mike?
Oh, yeah. Well, here in Colorado, like out there, it's hot. It's been pretty dang hot. But I've been focusing a lot of my energy on, I decided to volunteer to become the campaign manager of one of the politicians. Well, not really a politician, a person that was actually inspired by my wife getting up and doing things to become to run for Arapahoe County commissioner. And so Stephanie and I are both supporting her in that activity and stuff. We've got her kickoff meeting this evening. Looking forward to that. It's a district in which the Democrats have won soundly since around 2012. They beat all the candidates by 60 to 40 margin. So I'm looking at the opportunity for us to get out.
No challenge is too big.
Absolutely. We've got to stay in the game, and you can't cede to these people ground. You've got to stand up and fight. And there is no such thing as the perfect candidate, right, to wait for, because while you're waiting, they're steadily gaining ground. So I'm in the fight.
Fantastic. So, Mike, you and I have talked on this podcast a few times, and Colorado seems a little out of control at times, but I'm going to one up your state like it's never been one up before. So in Mansfield, It's been very interesting. We've talked about it before. We had a town manager that went on administrative leave in April 12th. He's still on administrative leave. I put out a press release saying we deserve transparency. We don't know what's going on. You can still have due process and let us know what the allegations are. The people in town should know as being the executor in chief of operations. So fast forward now, we're in July, probably 12 plus hours of executive session. Been kind of FOIing things. Other reporters have been looking at things. And the other night, I came across through an FOI, through a friend of mine, a letter that basically was no confidence in the council. There was allegations of labor interference. So the fire department union is under negotiations for contracts, and the sitting mayor, who is a weak mayor, right? She has zero power, basically said, stop all negotiations, which is pretty sure in violation of labor laws. Then she was told everybody that everything has to get directed through her, even though we had a fire chief who was the interim town manager. 8 department heads signed this letter, basically like a vote of no confidence. And they came out with the statement right before we got it, the town council. Oh, the investigation's complete. He didn't violate any town policies or anything. So we're just working on the timing and mechanics to bring him back. However, they are having a special meeting tonight to appoint a committee to find a new interim town manager. So they're going to keep paying this guy $1,000 a day, and they're going to find somebody else to do his job. Meanwhile, you have 8 department heads that basically said, this is no good. You're not interviewing all the people that have something to say, that were involved, that witnessed something. They're only interviewing, from what it seems like, certain individuals.
Liberal government at its best. Incompetence of taxpayer dollar. It's mind-boggling.
It is unreal. The good thing in all this is 2027 elections, I think we're going to do much better in town. We have a lot of people that have never commented on stuff showing up to town council meetings and being vocal on the social media posts. So it's people have starting to realize enough is enough. And, you know, they're out there every Friday. There are no King signs. I'm like, look right here in town. You've got King sitting right at town hall.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You know, the longer this stuff goes on, the more they're exposed for being the frauds that they actually are. So keep after them, Aaron, please.
Well, and you know, Aaron and guys, as we jump in today's podcast subject, and there's a nice inflection point here, and that is those who control the narrative ultimately control the vote. And there's a struggle for the narrative, and it's Kay Carl's full-time job, Michael, you, all of us, is really to try and help our listeners understand and manage the narrative. So what we've learned over in our town, Aaron, like yours, is people quickly get lost in the milieu of all the detail and start to see political mudslinging and step back. It's very important for us to frame things in a way that have consequence for the listener. And remember a while back, I told you about how we teach how to argue with a liberal. One, realize they're going to attack you. First, they're going to deny, right? Then they attack you personally. And then when you defend yourselves, then they become the victim. And so what we recommend is when they say something, you say, well, what do you mean? Could you give me an example of systemic racism? Could you give me an example of this? And then you say, well, how would that work? Describe how socialism, Kay Carl, would really work. And Aaron, in our training that we do, we know we like to localize and personalize. And I found by saying to people, well, could you describe to me how you think your life will be different, better or worse, certainly different under a socialist style of government, and throw it back to them to describe. And I have not yet once seen someone able to really complete that thought process.
You, Chris, you're 100% right. And I have a little confession. So we had town council meeting this past Monday, and usually I stick to what we teach. I was rushing. I printed off a whole bunch of, because they want this ridiculous dog park for almost between 550,000 to 1.4 million for a dog park. And so being a former canine handler, I know all the issues that go along with dog parks. And instead of telling a story, headline, sub-headline, few key points, I went into regurgitating and vomiting all over the table, facts, data, stats. And I walked out of there, I watched the replay, and I was like, what did I just do? I'm like, and Alyssa's like, you know, of course, my wife, she's very, very supportive. She was, oh, it wasn't that bad. I was like, it was terrible. I was like, I used a full 5 minutes, which I never do. And I should have just kept to the formula, Chris, and I didn't. And so I beg for forgiveness. Oh, let me put Mike back on stage. Oh, Mike, I didn't see you dropped off there. Sorry. So with that being said, K. Carl, where do you want to take this conversation today? You're muted. There you go.
I was told that we need to talk about this whole push that seemed to be coming strong from the Democratic Socialists of America. This whole thing about Marxism, and then Mike was sharing with us the speech this morning, Rubio's speech. And let's start off with that, Mike. Let's start off with Rubio's speech, and we can dovetail into that. I missed it.
Yeah, well, he did an absolutely beautiful job. And what he was doing is really characterizing, to a large extent, this whole cultural Marxism, Marxist movement, all of the Antifa folks and how they work together across borders to they'll plan something in one place and then and all together and then execute it in another place in a country and stuff. And he's talked specifically about the stuff that has been going on here in the United States and how they shifted the meaning of language over time to basically mean that when they're doing something bad, well, it's really for good reasons, right? And versus, but he goes through the whole explanation of what is actually going on. But most importantly, the entire meeting was about pulling together these 60 nations to begin to work in a coordinated way to combat it. Scott Bessent actually gave a speech as well, speaking of how the Treasury was going to be working and fighting against this stuff as well. Stephen Miller gave a great talk as well, speaking to how it really impacts us here culturally. So I highly recommend people go and check that out.
So it was really talking about fighting against these Marxist groups.
Absolutely.
That's working coordination.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, I hate to say it. Well, I don't hate to say it, but that's why I wrote my book, Douglas versus Marx, because we have to impact the understanding what liberty is in contrast to Marxism, especially in the minds of young people, because the young people think Marxism is cool because they never felt the pain of Marxism. When they think of Marxism or communism, they don't think of Russia. They think of Sweden. Okay,
Sweden
they don't think of the gulags.
Socialism years ago.
Say again, Chris.
So Sweden abandoned socialism years ago,
but they think they did it. It was nice about it, how they did it, and so they don't think of Russia. They don't think of China with all the mass murders and stuff. That's how young people think. They don't see communism, Marxism that way. They think it's more kumbaya-ish, and we're doing great things for people.
Well, you make an excellent point. I think it is actually they don't think. They simply don't think. They just feel, right? Everything is a feeling to these young people. I was having a discussion with my two grandsons yesterday about illegal immigration. I asked them, well, what would you do if you came home one day and somebody new was just occupying your house and literally, they didn't know what to say about that. And when I said that's pretty much the same as people entering this country illegally, and one grandson says, well, I think we need to find shelter for the immigrants. I said, grandson, that's not the issue. These people are not immigrants. It's not an issue of immigrants. It's the people that have actually illegally entered our country. So yeah, it's all about feelings.
K. Carl has made a career on storytelling, guys. And as we know, the people who control the narrative will control ultimately the people. And if you describe to someone, and let's take Aaron, our state, and you said, I want to give you a story Imagine a circumstance in which a government begins to tell you that the zoning under which you bought your house years ago, under which your property values have gone up, is no longer valid. And that we, by decree, can put a 3-story dense housing project next door to you. We can put parking in the street, block it. We can override everything. By the way, we will tell you have to put in sewer and all sorts of services. And by the way, homeless people can now start camping out in your public spaces. And you'd say, well, that's going to hurt my property values. Most of my equity, my value of my family is tied up in my home. And so they would say that will never happen. That would be illegal. Folks, that's what's happening in Connecticut under the guise of affordable housing. So what everyone's got to see, and Karl Marx wasn't necessarily a wordsmith, and he talked about the oppressed, but there's a narrative here, guys, where there's always a great label that sounds good. The elite seem to all vote for the notion of it, but no one's talking about the fact that the working people, regardless of race, gender, whatever, don't like what they're hearing. But the people who seem to like the theory are the intellectual elite left. So, Michael, to your point, who they are, I think we'll find out. But I think they is the media and these elites who voted for these people in New York City. Mondami went to Bowdoin. This is the elite. It's a microcosm of the rest of the country that we hope will ask questions like the one I just. Tell me how this really works. Explain it.
I really encourage the listeners to go get a copy of the Democrat Socialists of America platform. They just approved it back in June. I think it's entitled "Workers Deserve More." That sounds kind of Marxist to me, just the title of it, right? And so, if you read the platform, some things they want to do is they want to get rid of the U.S. Senate. They want to get rid of the Electoral College. They want to have a constitutional convention and rewrite the Constitution, take over the major industries, and also get rid of private schools, homeschool in particular. Right. And so when I was doing my research, we found there was a candidate who was a Democrat socialist who became president, took over this particular country, and did these things. That was Chavez. He did that to Venezuela.
Yeah.
And Venezuela has been crushed by that. So you got to do some homework. You got to find out. Don't believe what they tell you. Do the homework. Read it for yourself, and you see the direct parallels that Democrat socialist is derivative from Marxist ideology.
Well, Kegard, this is also the phenomenal thing that is impossible to some extent to believe. They all launch themselves on the idea that they want to do what's in the best interest of the workers, right? But everything that they do destroys the work that workers would have.
Well, right? they injure the people they say they want to protect.
Yeah.
Yep. And now capitalism has its problems, but I'd rather live in a country that has capitalism opportunity versus being a slave under some other form of government. But I don't like crony capitalism.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like.
Yeah. Well, and Michael, to your point, Aaron, you got to love this term workers. So remember the era when Karl Marx wrote this stuff, it was true that there was a class of people generally completely uneducated, no means of mass communication, very little means of not only education, but information allowed them to change their space in society. Today in the US, we have the most mobile, educated, flexible set of, and the best way for a quote worker, which includes McDonald's up to someone who's going in and working at a data center, an Amazon delivery driver, is choice. And how does choice happen? Well, people are allowed to invest capital, create new jobs, and new jobs compete with current jobs, and they offer to pay more. And guess what? While that person can educate themselves, you bet you guys, homeschooled, parochial school, private school that happen to have better grades, their ability to earn more goes up as well. Let me give you a concrete example. I'll throw it over to you guys. My daughter's boyfriend graduated from high school. and was considering college. Good athlete, not a great student. But you know what he said? I'm going to Electric Boat where they'll pay me something like $35 an hour to learn to build submarines. So he realized there's a direct path of knowledge and income. And Aaron, in our state, which is one of the worst in the country for economic development, people are leaving. Electric Boat is craving people to come and will pay them to learn. So this whole idea of workers is a really anachronistic, it's a historical term that really I don't think fits today's society and reality.
Yeah, and even then, I think that back when Karl Marx and Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, the whole purpose of that division had nothing to do with reality. It had to do with this false concept that, historically speaking, it's like the rich against the poor, the bourgeoisie against the proletariat. It's like, and it was all about the revolution of the workers to take control over the things that the rich had. But here's the thing that I think it doesn't require a whole lot of thought to reach the conclusion that if you think about who actually creates the jobs, who risk the capital to build things, who then pays substantial taxes. When we start talking about, well, they need to pay their fair share. Well, what these people have done is they've risked capital, they've created jobs, they create more taxes, income taxes from the workers, right? They do an awful lot to create the whole society that we live in. And what the left wants you to think is, oh, they're just a bunch of rich people consuming everything from everybody, when the exact opposite is quite the truth, which is the people that have resources, the capital, are the people that invest in creating the infrastructure that we have in this country so that we can live a long and peaceful life.
And you're right, Michael. It was a theory. They had no, it's really amazing me as I studied Douglas and Karl Marx, how two men looked at oppression in the world and came up with two totally different worldviews. And the basis of it is that Douglas believed that our rights come from God, and Karl Marx said, no, the rights come from government, or the collective, he would call it. Mm-hmm. And there lies the fundamental difference of Douglas and Karl Marx that helps you understand why Douglas opposes Marx on everything else he wrote about: free speech, religious freedom, parents involved in child's education, the role of government. And so Douglas told Marx basically, look, I didn't leave the plantation to trade one form of slavery for another one. That's not going to happen. Yeah, and that's what Marxism does.
Yeah. And you know what Douglas did, he was echoing the founding principles of this nation, right? The Declaration of Independence says we are all created equal. And, you know, when I started to study a little bit more about Thomas Jefferson, you know, I didn't realize that at the age of 26, he became a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, where the very first thing that he did was to introduce a bill through his cousin, but introduce a bill that basically said that owners of slaves could choose to free them if they wanted to. Of course, King George, threw that out the window. But when you take a look at it, he did that. He then went ahead 6 years later. He was only 26 when he did this in 1769. But 7 years later, he wrote the Declaration of Independence that said all men are created equal, and railed against King George for engaging in the slave trade. And then, as the third president, he led the charge to stop the slave trade. So our country was built around, especially led by Thomas Jefferson, and then echoed by great men like Frederick Douglass, that, you know, this nation was built to be free. It was built on the premise of everybody being equal and being free. There was always the tuggle going on by those that don't want that to be the case. But the fact of the matter is that it was launched as a nation.
So, Aaron, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, Carl, So I find this fascinating. Is it not true that the founders did tremendous research all the way back to the Greeks on virtually every form of government known to mankind, right?
Yep.
They did that. In any of their research, did they ever find governments that operated successfully under communism or any? I don't think they found any. There was no historical record of people getting together saying, let's go after the big guys. They found zero. And they developed the most inclusive, most fundamentally oriented government. Here comes Karl Marx in a coffee house in Germany with no research. And since then, any government ever formed around that basis has prisons on their borders to keep people in. They are protesting. So I wonder what the left says. There is no historical precedent for what they're promoting in our country versus our country based on centuries, Aaron, of forms of government, of representation, of thinking.
Well, Chris, if you look at it, so I was watching, I think it was NBC or ABC, and they had Mondami on there. And every time he was asked a question, well, why do you do this? Why are you doing that? He's always going back to, we have to stand for the working people. And that sounds really great. If you're young and uneducated and you don't know about Marxism and socialism, oh yeah, I want somebody that stands for the working people. And when, K. Carl, I just did a whole segment on my radio show on this, and I was pulling apart the Democratic Socialists of America, their manifesto, their whatever you want to call it. And they explicitly state that they reject any economic order based on private role. So everything that we have been for the last 250 years, this group, which is starting to, I would say, pick up a little bit over the last several months with everything out of NYC, and they support the control of resources, production, economic planning. They want to control everything. They don't want you to own anything. They're in it for the Green New Deal. But when you have people out there like Mondami, who I will give it to him, he's pretty slick in front of the camera, and says, well, we need to stand for the working people. We're here for you. I'm sure, maybe, New York, free childcare if your kid's 2 and under. That's great. Rent freezes. It's awesome. Look at what we're doing for the working people. It might work for maybe a year or two, but then when the money runs out, what happens? You get, a rotten apple, basically.
Until they give away their personal property.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you mean? Guys, I have to hop.
Yeah, we're at our time.
So why don't you guys wrap up?
All right, Chris, we'll see you. So, K. Carl, we'll start with you if you want to wrap up, because we're just hitting our mark, actually.
Well, the topics we're talking about today, Douglas versus Marx, it's all in the book, Douglas versus Marx, The Battle for America. So get a copy of the book, but put the book in a young person's hands, because we got to prepare young people for the ideological battle that is taking place. They're not prepared right now because we have not given them the tools to push back. How you push back? You push back with the liberty message of Frederick Douglass. That's all I got to say.
That's it. I'm using it with my 10-year-old. Every day we read a piece of it.
Yeah, it's you got to push back. I think your book exposes the truth, the difference between freedom and force. Marx is all about force. Douglas is all about freedom, right? That's what our nation was built on, the idea of freedom and creating a society where we can be free to do what we choose to do, as long as we don't hurt anyone else. The thing that you mentioned, Aaron, which is, so when you take a look at Mondami, and I've been listening to all these guys. When I listen to them, I say, man, how eloquent they are. But everything that comes out of their mouths are just lies and distortions. And so I think the crazy thing is that they do it so fast. So let's say K. Carl, what they'll do is they'll tell a lie about you, right? And then anybody that associates themselves with you, everybody that believe their lie, believe that you're that I'm the same as you, which I am, but not based upon the lie that they're told about you, right? And so it's a crazy psychological mind twist that they're doing. And so that's why I think it's really critical for kids, especially kids, and all of us to begin to get into the truth. What is the truth? I think Marx and Douglas and Marx. Your book does that real extremely well. I think digging into the real history of the founding of this nation and what our founding principles are, we've got to really dig in, because what I found is the more I've dug into those documents, the Bible, and what the Bible actually says, because these people actually use the Bible in ways that twist the truth as well.
Yep.
So what I would say is just stay strong, and be committed, and don't be afraid to fight, right? And don't wait, because the longer we wait to start engaging, the more territory we see to them.
That is true. That is true. And all I'm going to say to that is
stay woke.
All right, folks. We'll see you on the next Liberty Collaborative podcast next Thursday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time to about 11 p.m. Have a great weekend.
All right, Aaron.
Thanks for joining us on the Liberty Collaborative. If today's episode lit a fire or gave you clarity, share it and be part of the movement. Subscribe, leave a